You've heard myths about a lost civilization, but the real story is louder, older, and still here, long before cities rose and borders were drawn, before Columbus ever set sail. This vast land, stretching from the frozen Arctic to the rainforests of the Amazon, would suffer far. Bartad du kan stakkerpoffer, offer dakripon urferdanen was home to millions of people. Hello followers, welcome back to another episode of the Shadows of History series. If you're into gripping documentaries, deep dives into historical events, hidden truths, and untold stories, you're definitely in the right place. Before we jump in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and drop a comment below. I love hearing your thoughts. Big shout out to all our new subscribers. Welcome to the family. And to my returning viewers, you already know you're the real hero. All right, let's dive into today's story. You're not going to want to miss this one. They were the first storytellers, builders, farmers, and philosophers of the Americas. They are the indigenous peoples, the original caretakers of this hemisphere. From the Arctic to Patagonia, across the Americas, indigenous peoples built complex urban centers throughout the continent. They engineered landscapes with terraces, canals, and irrigation, and shaped continents long before European arrival. Archaeologists tell us their ancestors came to these continents thousands of years ago, crossing a land bridge from Asia during the last ice age. Over countless generations, they spread across two continents, adapting to deserts, mountains, forests, and plains. From these diverse environments grew hundreds of unique cultures, each with its own language, art, and relationship with the earth. They managed forests for food and fire control. They grew sophisticated crops like maize and squash, and created trade networks spanning thousands of miles. In Mesoamerica, the Maya charted the movements of the stars with astonishing precision. The Aztec built great cities like Tenochtitlan, filled with temples and canals. In the Andes, the Inca Empire united mountain peoples with an intricate network of roads and terraces carved into stone. Yet classrooms shrank them to a few cliches. Why? Farther north, the Mississippian peoples raised earthen mounds that still rise from the ground today. Silent witnesses to ancient cities like Cahokia. And across the plains, deserts, and forests, nations such as the Navajo, Haudenosaunee, Cree, and Inuit nurtured complex spiritual and social systems that guided their communities for centuries. Colonial narratives erased complexity to justify conquest and violence, and many of those myths still stick today. But in 1492, everything began to change. When European explorers landed in the Americas, they brought with them new tools, new beliefs, and diseases that indigenous peoples had never encountered. Smallpox, measles, and influenza swept through entire nations. Millions died. Those who survived faced colonization, displacement, and violence. In this minute, we'll bust the biggest myths. They weren't a single people, but diverse nations. They didn't vanish into thin air or disappear. Their knowledge still powers modern agriculture worldwide. Their astronomical knowledge still informs calendars and navigation. Their legal traditions underpin governance and law in many places. Lands were taken, sacred sites destroyed, and in time children were taken from their families and forced into residential and boarding schools, punished for speaking their languages or practicing their traditions. This was the attempt to erase entire cultures. But it did not succeed. Ready to challenge what you think you know? Meet the real histories that survived. Against all odds, indigenous peoples endured. They resisted, they adapted, and today, their voices are rising once again. Across the Americas, indigenous nations are reclaiming their rights, protecting their lands, and revitalizing their languages. Stick around, because the truth about the indigenous peoples of the Americas is more surprising than the myths. In the United States, more than 570 federally recognized tribes continue to shape modern culture. In Canada, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples lead powerful movements for truth and reconciliation. And, throughout Latin America, nations like the Mapuche, Quechua, Aymara, and Guarani defend their forests, their rivers, and their ways of life. From Standing Rock to the Amazon, these communities remind the world that the fight for the planet's future is deeply connected to the fight for indigenous survival. What's often forgotten is just how much the world owes to indigenous knowledge. Corn, potatoes, tomatoes, chocolate, and countless other foods that sustain humanity today were first cultivated by indigenous farmers. Their ecological wisdom, built through thousands of years of observation, continues to guide modern science in the struggle against climate change. Their philosophies teach balance, respect, and the understanding that the earth is not something we own, but something we belong to. The story of the indigenous peoples of the Americas is not just one of tragedy. It is a story of endurance, of creativity, and of renewal. Despite centuries of colonization and loss, these nations continue to thrive, carrying ancient traditions into the modern world and reminding us of a truth as old as the land itself, that we are all connected, that the earth remembers, and that the spirit of the first peoples still walks with us today.